Alrighty. I know everyone's busy. It's right over lunchtime for those of us on the East Coast, so we want to keep this on time. I know folks are trickling in. I am happy to say this will be available on demand for those who couldn't join or are joining late. So I know I'll be going back and revisiting the on-demand recording as well. But we are so excited to have everyone here today. I personally have been looking forward to this conversation. If you all have been following along, earlier in this year, we published the Forrester Total Economic Impact of Navan study. So I'm excited to have some powerhouse speakers here today to really dive into the data and walk us through what this means in practice. So before we get too far into the weeds, I want to give you a quick overview of who is speaking here today. My name is Haley Campbell. I'm product marketing here at Navan. And I am joined by Michael Sindicic, president at Navan, and a consultant at Forrester, Bharath Sivan. Michael, do you want to give a few seconds of an overview, an introduction?
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much for having us. My name's Michael. I'm the president of Navan. I've been at the company for almost 10 years at this point. I started when we were very early as a little bit less than 10 employees, and have kind of seen the whole journey of the company. I spent a lot of time on the go-to-market side. Then I went to go build our payments and expense product and business within the company. And as of the last year or so, I'm now the president of Navan, which means I oversee everything like sales, revenue, marketing, corp dev, M&A, and the like. So I work a lot with customers all day long and talk with a lot of our customers all the time. So really, really happy to be here.
Thanks, Michael. Bharath, do you want to give a quick introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Haley. My name is Bharat Shivan. I'm a consultant and I'm part of Forrester's Total Economic Impact practice based here in the Netherlands. Recently, I led the Total Economic Impact study for Navan, and I'm here to talk about the findings of the study. I'm also a very happy user of Navan, so it's extra special for me to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear your perspective from both sides. All right, cool. Like we said, Bharath is joining us from Forrester. Before we dive into the specific findings, I wanted to set the stage of the TEI itself. So for those unfamiliar, a total economic impact or TEI study isn't just a survey, it's a rigorous independent analysis conducted by Forrester to validate the potential financial impact of a technology on an organization. So Michael, we commissioned the study, a similar study back in 2022. Why was it important for Navan to partner with Forrester again now? And what were we looking to validate this time around?
Yeah, I think in general, 2022 is a very, very long time ago. The world is changing very, very quickly, and so is Navan, and so are our customers' needs. So we've done a tremendous amount of work regarding AI, making the product a lot more efficient, smooth. We've built more out around payments and expense management as well, have seen the value of all of these products coming together to deliver value for our customers. And it's really nice not to have, us touting our own stuff. It's nice to add a additional party that is separate from Navan that's actually doing research, talking to our customers, and validating a lot of the things that we're trying to do and build, and gives us insight on where we need to keep going and keep investing in our products and offerings. So main reason is 4 years ago is a very long time ago, and it's good to get a more updated analysis after we've spent a lot of time building.
And we found, again, I've been living in the report since it was published. There's so much goodness and so many good little tidbits in there. Before we dive into what we found, Bharath, can you give us a little bit of an insight of what goes into creating a study like this?
Absolutely. So TEI, Total Economic Impact, is essentially it's a proven, consistent, and repeatable methodology that we use within Forrester to justify technology investments. We've been using this framework for a couple of decades now. And when we do such studies, we do take a very comprehensive approach where we actually talk to the users of the technology to understand what are the benefits that they see. We talk about the benefits, but we also talk about the cost. We talk about both the direct cost as well as indirect cost. In this case, it's a cost associated with Navan licensing, but also, what sort of effort goes into setting up Navan, as well as the flexibility factors, which refers to the advantages an organization can expect in the future from investing in Navan today. So we look at all of these aspects, and we finally look at all of them through a lens of risk, which means that we consider what are some of the factors that can vary the cost or benefit. So to what extent can these benefits or costs be changed? And we look at all of that, and that risk adjustment is then applied throughout the study, throughout all the elements that we quantify. So that's essentially what a TI study is all about. It's essentially a case study that quantifies the business value of Navan and also sort of explores what is the art of possible.
That's amazing. When we're thinking about, pulling all of this together and getting the information, Forrester went straight to the source, our actual customers. So, Bharath, can you walk us through who you talked to?
Indeed. So, this is quite a multi-step approach that we take. We first start with the due diligence and, testing, internally speaking to Navan and trying to understand what exactly is the value of this product. Then we go out to customers and test this hypothesis. In this particular case, we spoke to 5 different customers of Navan, and we tried to understand what their experience of using Navan was. It is important to highlight here that these interviews were between Forrester and the customers themselves, and it did not involve Navan. So the idea was to give them a safe space to sort of talk about their journeys, the challenges that they had, and also the benefits that they've experienced. As you can see, we had a rather good distribution of industries as well as personas covering both finance and travel. And in this case, as you can see, we spoke to customers in the software development space, customer in the consumer goods space, financial services, as well as life sciences. And if you look at the size of the organizations, they also vary quite much in terms of the size and scale of operations, which also gave us a good coverage and rich data to build a business case on. So based on these inputs and the data collected from these customers, we put together a financial model as well as a case study that offers more of a narrative around and detail around this financial model.
Awesome. And when we were pulling together these personas, we built a composite organization to build the case study off of. Can you speak to the composite org?
Yes, absolutely. So, what a composite organization is that it's a hypothetical organization. So, like I said, a TEI is a case study. So, the composite organization is an imaginary organization that we built to sort of reflect the aspects or reflect the dimensions of these customers who we spoke to. So, in order to translate the insights and the data collected from these interviews into a financial model, we had to build an imaginary organization that sort of reflects who we spoke to. And that this composite organization then provided us a baseline to sort of construct the business case. So in this particular case, we are looking at an organization of 1 billion in revenue, 5,000 employees. 50% of the employees travel regularly. They have a travel budget of 20 million and an expense budget of 10 million. So this was the composite organization on top of which we actually built and quantified the benefits and the cost.
So just to clarify,
Mhm.
findings in the report are based off of this profile.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. So something that was really fascinating to me is really diving in and quantifying customer pain points. This is where I'm really interested, Michael. When you sit down with CFOs and travel managers, you're constantly on the road speaking to those in the field, talking about their pain points, what would interest them, why they would finally make the jump. What is usually the breaking point that causes them to make a change?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of things on here that I think that we found. When I'm speaking with customers, a lot of it boils down to the friction and the noise that happens with a T&E program. When people go home and use personal tools and products, they get great experiences, great technology. And then typically with legacy solutions, when they're needing to do something for work, they need to use really clunky tools that aren't exactly integrated. They might take a long time to get the work done. You might be spend your weekends uploading receipts and doing manual expense reports. And specifically on the booking side, we see issues where people will say, "Hey, I'm working at this corporate. You're asking me to use this booking tool, but I find cheaper rates outside the system, or I find more inventory that could be missing." And so when we're pairing, legacy technology that's not user friendly, we're missing things in the product and we're creating a lot of manual processes. Ultimately, that creates one, a lot of noise for the employees. Hey, I was stranded with the New York storms that just happened. I was on hold for hours, et cetera. So the employee experience is lacking, creates a lot of noise. And then ultimately, there's also a lot of lack of adoption. And so, why do we manage travel and expenses? We want to make sure that we're having a really good support for the employees when they're on the road. We want to make sure we're getting access to the right discounts and the right corporate rates and the right inventory in the solution. And we want visibility in real time into the spend that's happening across travel and expense management. And if people aren't adopting or they're doing their expenses later, all of that creates a lack of visibility and a lack of real time visibility. So we end up spending a lot of time afterward chasing things, asking people to input their receipts, compiling reports from fragmented systems and different travel agencies around the world, ultimately lacking that visibility in real time. So to me, it's kind of this cycle of, not a great employee experience creates delayed visibility, creates a lot of extra work for the administrative team to understand what's going on the T&E spend. And also there's a big element of duty of care, which could be missing if people are booking outside the system.
A nightmare. Barath, how did you see this reflected in the study itself?
Absolutely. I think all of the points that Michael just mentioned, I think they resonated very well with the customers who we spoke to. So you see some of these pain points listed here. These are all customers mentioned that Navan was able to directly address for them. So as we go through this, I'm pretty sure some of you listening might also be able to relate to these as well. I won't talk about all of these, but I think I want to touch upon at least two or three of them, starting with the fragmented travel management system. So I think this was one of the most talked about point across all the interviews that we did. The customers told us that their travel and expense environment where it was very fragmented before they invested in Navan, of course. It often consists of multiple regional travel management companies, separate booking tools, as you said, Michael, and a very manual process for expense reporting. What this meant was, at the end of the day, this was chaos and fragmentation, inconsistent service delivery, data silos, and even confusion among employees. It reminds me of one of the quotes, one of the customer who highlighted that their previous environment before Navan was chaotic, with employees unsure where to book, whom to contact for support, and oftentimes travel booking themselves. It was such a poor employee experience, and for regular travelers, this was such a nightmare. So I think that was one of the key pain points that we consistently heard across all the interviews. Another one that I wanted to touch upon was about limited visibility into travel and expense management data. Customers consistently cited lack of visibility into travel and expense, and this was a major bottleneck for them, in the sense that it was a barrier to ensure operational control and make strategic decisions. It hindered budgeting, forecasting, and essentially the ability to identify cost savings. But there was one customer who highlighted that they were unable to run analytics or model any policy changes because essentially they did not have any sort of consolidated data set to work with. So I think those are some of the key pain points that we consistently heard from the customers who we spoke to. And of course, I've also tried to highlight some of the key quotes here. These are not all of it, but there are definitely quotes like these and much richer quotes like these in the study. So I'd urge all of you to have a look at that as well.
It was fascinating to read the study. I felt that personally. I've worked on different tools or unmanaged travel programs. So once I finally made the switch to Navan at a previous company, I actually came and worked at Navan. I was like, this is so game changing. I felt those pain points personally. So now, we're looking at those customers who've made the jump, onboarded to Navan, um, wanted to talk through the benefits that they saw. So this slide here is really an executive summary of the entire study. Barath, can you give us a high level view of where this 3-year impact is actually coming from?
Yeah, sure. So based on our analysis, adoption of Navan delivers the composite organization an ROI of 376%. So that is 9.1 million in benefits and 7.2 million in net present value. So if you consider what future benefits are worth in today's money, that's what you see here as net present value after accounting for cost and risk. And where or what constitutes this benefit is what you see on the right-hand side of your screen, which is essentially the different buckets of savings from a benefit perspective. We have direct cost savings as well as productivity gains, as well as some cost avoidance based on our conversations with customers. These are some of the categories that we were able to quantify for this study.
Awesome. So let's jump into it. Let's start with the single biggest driver of that ROI, that direct travel savings. When I look at these are massive numbers. 16% total reduction in total travel spend is huge. Barath, that's huge. Walk us through the mechanics behind this. How did we get here?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think of this category, when we spoke to customers, they highlighted that they experienced significant savings through Navan's negotiated rates, dynamic policy enforcement, and also a very simplified trip fee model. In fact, prior to Navan, some of the interviews mentioned that they never had a centralized booking channel, and they, as I mentioned earlier, they relied on multiple different travel management companies, legacy booking tools, and often ended up paying a very high amount of transactional fee as well. So, in fact, there was a customer in the software development organization who explained that they used to pay between 100 to 150% of what they pay Navan today. That's a lot of money. And on top of that, customers also called out that they gained access to a broader inventory, including the NDC content and online travel agency rates, as well as negotiated discounts through Navan's lodging collection. Then there was also savings attributed from the ability to apply, dynamic policy controls and incentivize cost-conscious choices through Navan's reward program. Overall, all of this, when we spoke to different customers, they experienced savings of anywhere between 16 to 20% of the total travel spent. And on top of that, the interviewed customers also benefited from a 1% rebate on their total USD spend on travel, which of course brought in additional savings as well. Altogether, what that means is that direct cost savings from Navan amounts to 7.2 million of financial impact over 3 years for the composite organization.
Huge. That's amazing. So, Michael, how does Navan, honestly, how does Navan do this? How does Navan empower leaders to drive this level of efficiency while still using business travel as a strategic growth lever?
Yeah, I think Bharat hit on quite a few of them, but I'll highlight a couple. So one, our philosophy from the beginning has always been go and connect to every single inventory source that we can find out there. In the early days, that was one of the biggest complaints we heard from customers was I'm missing content or my people are finding cheaper rates outside the solution. And by the way, a lot of times there's a reason why. A company might not want basic economy fares to show in the corporate travel product, but a user might go and find a basic economy fare. But what we've been doing for the history of Navan is we're connecting to every inventory source. So what that means is multiple GDSs, which provide inventory directly from the airlines. We are at the forefront and the leader in NDC connections, which means we're cutting out a middleman there and going directly to the airlines in certain cases, which airlines love this because they can really show their content in an elevated way. They can offer various perks and they can offer better rates that you can oftentimes not find through the GDS. And when it comes to hotel inventory, it's direct connections with all the major hoteliers. It's pulling in content through the GDS. And it's also including consumer inventory from the booking.coms, Pricelines, Kayaks, Expedias, Agodas, et cetera. So we're always trying to pull in all the content we can. We take that volume that we have, we go and negotiate with these different providers on behalf of all of our customers. We then negotiate with our customers. So a lot of times hotels might want to have direct rates and direct relationships with the customer. So if I have a big office in, let's call it San Francisco, and it's right next to a specific hotel, we'll go and negotiate that discount with you. And then on top of that, all of that inventory is then presented with a dynamic policy. And I think that's a little bit about what this quote is saying. If I have a customer that says, hey, my hotel city cap in New York City is $300 a night. One, that doesn't make sense if it's Fashion Week and the hotels are really expensive. But two, if it's the day after a big storm in New York, a hotel cap of $300 is way too conservative or aggressive, and the price might be $150 or $200 for good 4.5-star hotels. And so what we do is we take in the policy, we show and have your policies, but we also dynamically lower the rates when it makes sense to try and direct the travelers to book under those specific policies, which create a lot of savings. And on top of that, Navan will reward travelers when they choose cheaper options for the company. And the whole dynamic there is Navan actually funds those rewards that then travelers can use when they want to go on personal vacations or extend their business trips. And what it does is it gets the user to think about the corporate dollar as if it's their own. Oftentimes, we make different decisions when we're leveraging company money to make a buying decision versus if we're going on a personal vacation and looking at a hotel, we might weigh cost a little bit more heavily there when it's our dollar. And so if the employee has something to gain by being a great corporate citizen, the company wins and the employee wins. And it's all in an effort to continue to drive adoption onto our platform, which then helps duty of care and the whole platform and a virtuous cycle of better negotiations and discounts. So that's kind of in a sense what we do. And what we see is the travelers are often really highly leveraged employees within the company. If we can save money that then allows you to get on the road more, to go close more customers, to do a corporate event, to be able to bring people who have been hired distributed onto an offsite at the company where they're really building the culture for the team and the company, that's a huge win for us. And so if we can save money, we can then allow you to spend money to continue to drive your business forward, or pocket the savings, which a lot of companies like to do as well.
That was a fantastic segue, that it's not just the direct cost savings and money in your pocket, but it's actually getting that time back to be applied in a more strategic way. So, Michael, you did a fantastic segue for us. We also quantified some of that efficiency, the efficiency savings and cost of your employees' time. Bharath, the study shows a significant efficiency gain here. Can you walk us through how the composite org turned booking time into productive time?
Yes, for sure. So throughout the interviews, we heard consistent feedback from customers that, Navan improved their productivity, not just for their travelers, but also for travel managers. Before Navan, employees often had to, like we said earlier, navigate multiple systems, directly contact travel agents or book directly with suppliers, and then also document and report this in a different system. So a lot of manual workflow, a lot of manual work, a lot of low value admin work as well, especially for regular travelers. That was a lot of effort. With Navan, employees were able to complete their travel booking in just under 5 minutes compared to 15 or 20 previously. As a matter of fact, when we spoke to customers, they couldn't even imagine their life before Navan, what it was like. When we asked them for, how much time you used to spend on travel, they don't even know that anymore. So that's all thanks to Navan's intuitive user interface, mobile accessibility, and also self-service capabilities, some advanced self-service capabilities there. And for travel managers now, who previously used to spend up to 50% of their time, according to interviews, coordinating and chasing items, they also saw significant productivity gains, which essentially for them freed up capacity and allowed them to do higher value work, such as strategic analysis or process improvement, rather than being stuck in a transactional set of tasks. So altogether, all of this contributed to 355,000 in US dollars in terms of the financial benefit over a period of 3 years for the composite organization.
That's amazing. And Michael started to touch on this earlier. It's not just that, hard savings, but what does this actually mean for your employees? So when we're thinking about saving 15 minutes per booking, Michael, when you're talking to C-level leaders, what does this mean for them? How do they view this removal of friction?
I think it just means that employees can focus on what they've been hired to do. And if people are spending a lot of time navigating tools, contacting agents, trying to change things themselves, it's a big time suck. A personal anecdote: I was thinking about this webinar yesterday. I was scootering home, and I needed to book a flight to New York in a few weeks, and the light turned red, and I was able to pull out my phone, book my flights, and by the time the light went green, I was able to start scootering back again home. And so I think that's the magic of it. It's just allowing you to continue to focus on what you're supposed to be doing, and removing a lot of the hassle. It's a theme throughout Navan. It's something that we actually report on, is the average time to book. We did it in our S1. We did it in our videos. We report on it on our quarterly earnings. It's a big focus for Navan to make sure that we're continuing to drive efficiency. And ideally, the less time people need to spend in our products, the better. And we're trying to enable that to make sure people are productive.
I'm glad we were able to keep you scootering, um, happily at a red light. No,
Yeah.
no booking while you're driving, but it is really fantastic that we're able to, I hardly ever think about booking trips now. I just know that it's taken care of in the back end. Keeping it moving, there's also this concept of the cost to doing nothing. There is this hidden cost and risk of maintaining multiple legacy systems, staying with the status quo. Broth, can you talk to us about the savings from simply turning off the old tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So, investing in Navan also meant that for some of these organizations, as a matter of fact, for all the organizations who we interviewed, they could eliminate or retire some of these legacy tools and point solutions that were previously in use. Of course, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but we heard that organizations often relied on multiple point solutions and very region-specific travel management companies and platforms, which naturally created fragmented workflows for them, but also a lot of additional overhead for the organization as well in terms of managing all of this systems. So they obviously had some cost associated with them as well. And oftentimes, what we heard from customers was that they also had limited offerings, which made the cost even harder to justify. So after adopting Navan, customers were able to consolidate all their travel and expense into a single platform, eliminating the need for all of these multiple tools and multiple vendors. Altogether, if you think about this particular benefit, that resulted in a financial impact of over 80,000 over a period of 3 years for the composite organization.
Wow. Just thinking of a patched system gives me a bit of anxiety. Michael, from a leadership perspective, what is the biggest risk you see of having fragmented data across multiple legacy tools?
For me, it always comes back to the employee experience. At a previous company, we had a traditional setup. Concur as the booking tool, expense management. We had a TMC, and I was at the airport, and my flight got canceled. There was a really long line at the airline's desk to be able to change something. I called the agent, and I said, "Hey, I need to change my flight. I'd like to get on this one." And they said, "Well, what's your current record locator number?" And I was like, "I don't know. I booked it with you guys. Do you know it?" And they were like, "No, no, no. You booked it with Concur. It should be in your email or on your tool." So I need to go to the tool, find the number, pass it, and it's just a very, very clunky experience. And so, to me, from an employee experience, multiple tools creates just multiple points of friction that you need to integrate things and have systems talk to each other, open up different apps, and it interrupts the workflow. From a customer or a company perspective, I think what that ultimately does is there's a bigger lack of visibility into reporting in real time and a bigger lack of visibility from a duty of care perspective. So, for example, there was something, I think yesterday or a few days ago, where there was a big issue in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta. What that means is immediately customers can come to our dashboard, look at our live map, and see exactly where everybody is, what their trips are, who's currently on the road, who's flying in, who's flying out that might be disrupted, and be able to help those people get on their way and make sure that they're safe. Same thing with the big storms that we're having almost every other week in New York, which creates a lot of angst and issues for employees to be on the road. So if we can have a really seamless experience, if we can have visibility into everything in real time, then we can support our employees. And I would say one beautiful thing about having the expense solution with the travel solution is you can actually view in real time who's not booking on the platform, because you'll see an expense that comes from outside that doesn't match to a trip within Navan, and you can understand, why was someone not booking on the platform and adopting onto the system, taking advantage of your rates and things like that. So it's all about visibility and that real time visibility in my eyes.
That's it. That just took me back to years ago when I would be on hold trying to find different confirmation numbers and not knowing where on earth they were. I'm so happy that I'm past that now. But you started to gear this up, the fact that we are, implementing travel and expense together. We've looked at the impact on the traveler side, so now let's shift to the expense side. Barath, walk us through the hard savings the composite org found by moving to automated policy enforcement and how that impacted the expense side.
Yep. So as you'd recall, one of the key pain points that we discussed previously, and just Michael just mentioned it, was about the visibility, right? When we interviewed the customers, they told us that they, oftentimes a comprehensive visibility into expense claims and claim management never existed. And that made it difficult to prevent any sort of unauthorized or non-compliant spending and essentially stop and monitor leakages. The Navan's corporate card, they were able to enforce policy at the point of transaction, essentially reducing leakage and any sort of fraudulent claims while improving visibility and compliance altogether. I think that was one of the key standouts for most of the customers who we spoke to. And talking about compliance, there was also an interesting aspect around how Navan essentially shaped employee behavior. So there was this one interesting quote from a customer, I think that's what you see here, who noted that Navan's dynamic policy and traffic light alerts actually helped steer their employees towards more compliant choices, even before expenses were made. So I think that's again one other strong point that we have here. And collectively, what all of this meant is that organizations could essentially avoid any sort of unnecessary cost and maintain more tighter control over budget. Altogether, this particular benefit brought savings of over 300,000 over a period of 3 years for the composite organization.
Wow. Michael, can you walk us through Navan's approach to creating this automated policy?
Yeah. When we talk about it internally and from a product org perspective, we think about it a lot like a Waymo or a Tesla, where the idea is basically you have as an administrator, you have a screen that if you're using the car example, that you can see, okay, the passengers know that the car is seeing other cars around, it's driving, it sees if someone, riding a bicycle or something like that. The funny thing is that the car doesn't need that screen in order to do self-driving. The screen is there so that the passengers feel comfortable, confident, and have visibility that they can watch what's going on. And our approach to policy is essentially when a customer comes to implement Navan, we set up all of those policies ahead of time and we tie them to your HRIS. So we know, okay, if I'm a VP of sales, I might be in this policy. If I'm a CEO, I might be here. If I'm a new junior employee as an SDR, I might be in this policy. And essentially what we do is we set these policies up ahead of time so that when the employee actually spends on the corporate card or they submit on their personal card an expense, we then run many different checks to understand what's the cost center, department, region, subsidiary, but we're also including the financial transaction data that we get from the networks or from our own cards where we can see, okay, this was a Starbucks, and we can read the receipt with level 3 data and understand this was a, caramel macchiato. Based on all of this, based on what's on the employee's calendar that they can connect and we can see who else is there, participants, it might be a customer meeting, then we can file that expense in the exact policy that wants to be there. And the employee can, of course, see it, but the admin can also see it like that screen on the Tesla when all of the different receipts are starting to flow in. So it's a much more proactive approach. Personally, if I have an employee who buys a hamburger or a hot dog, I don't care. I don't need to see that. I need to make sure that they're spending under $75 a day while traveling for work on meals because that's the policy. And if I can have a system that checks everything for me, sends me a summary, and I can see the reports and everything gets filed in real time, we think it's a beautiful solution. And that's what we're trying to change with expense reporting is a much more upfront, proactive measurement of employee spend, making sure that things are flowing correctly. And when something that looks off, we want to flag it. We think that managers oftentimes with legacy expense solutions, they get this notification fatigue where they essentially press approve, approve, approve. What we want to do is flag something that's really important and approve the rest of the stuff automatically so that you're actually paying attention to the things that look off or the actions that you need to take. So that's essentially how we think about our approach to policy.
As an employee operating with this policy, it also just gives such a great peace of mind knowing that I'm not just submitting something hoping it gets approved after the fact a month later. I
Yeah.
know, okay, I'm in bounds. Oh, I'm out of bounds. For someone who needs peace of mind, that is so helpful to know that I'm sticking to my policy. Um, Also, on that same note, we're not just talking again about the hard cost savings, but that time back, I lived in a world where I would have to schedule an hour every month to sit down and do my expense reports, and I'm so happy I don't have to do that anymore. So Barath, can you walk us through this efficiency gain? 40% efficiency gain is huge. Can you walk us through how we found that?
Yeah, absolutely. So similar to what we saw with travel earlier, customers also reported that Navan significantly reduced the time both employees and finance teams spent on manual expense reporting and reconciliation. Before Navan, essentially, like you said, Neely, the prior state was that employees had to retain receipts, manually enter data, and often sort of wait for weeks for reimbursement. With Navan, that's not the case anymore. Employees do not submit expense reports anymore, and it's all automated. And most importantly, it was the finance teams who we spoke to. They really saw, significant productivity gains. Prior to Navan, these teams used to spend a considerable amount of time reviewing receipts, chasing missing documentation, often asking for missing context, processing reimbursements, and so on. With Navan, all of these tasks became automated, and the time spent on auditing and reconciliation dropped. What that essentially meant was that these improvements allowed finance staff to sort of reallocate their time to higher value activities. So things like planning, forecasting, etc. So when we talk about productivity, the other aspect I wanted to highlight is that it's not just about doing something faster. We are talking about automation here. So right, what that means is that it's just not doing something faster, but it's doing something faster while reducing error and ensuring quality. And that is something that's exactly when Navan shines in this regard. So altogether, when you think about productivity savings with expense management, we've calculated savings of 1.2 million of financial impact for the composite organization over a period of 3 years.
Wow. Michael, 40% reduction in time spent auditing, that's like half a work week. Um, when you're talking to leaders, where, obviously there's huge value, but where are they able to reallocate that time? Where is that time going when they can have a half a work week back?
It's very similar to the way we talk about it on the travel side. If I can have you not spending time focusing on manually filing expense reports, it means that you're doing, and spending your time and money and resources on doing the job that you were hired to do. A personal story, I travel a lot for work. And one of the things that I do, and one of the times that I freaked out the most internally with, building the product, but when I'm leaving the parking garage at SFO, and I'm in my car and I pay for the parking, the arm comes up, and my test to the team is, can I ensure that I get the notification instantly, that when I click it, it opens my camera, I take a photo of the receipt, and then I drive off before the arm comes down and before there's an issue. And usually the arm will stay up, but it's a general test about the time. And one time I didn't get the notification and it took a while to load, and that was an immediate emergency meeting of like, oh my god, if that's happening to me, we could be costing our customers and employees lots of time doing these expense reports. So that's in a case where we actually needed to upload a receipt. So a company might have a policy where if it's over a certain amount, then you need to add a receipt. And people interpret the tax laws in different countries in different ways, and sometimes there might be VAT and expenses to claim, so you need to add these receipts. But it's really interesting what Bharath is saying here about the 80% time that he found. One thing that we do track internally is what percentage of our expenses were automatically submitted, which means that it is touchless. It means that the employee never needed to do anything. It means that the admin never needed to do anything. And we're constantly chasing more experiences like that. So one thing that we launched, we already had a Lyft integration. We launched an Uber integration. So now when people book Ubers and they leverage the card and Navan is the expense T&E platform, that receipt flows over automatically. And it even reconciles when you add a tip, and that adds back into the system. And so we look for constant integrations to just automatically get receipts and automatically file expenses. And again, we just want people not to be in the platform. We actually want them on their way, and it'll be a beautiful day one day when there is no system, or people don't need to log in and they've always done their expenses automatically.
I'm going to be tracking the parking arms now.
It's a good test, yeah, and it causes a lot of anxiety because you really want to make sure you go before the arm closes.
I'll keep you posted if I ever see the arm close before I get the notification, but it has been so lovely to not have to think about expenses. I can just go on with my day and know it's taken care of.
That's right.
Uh, so, to me, peace of mind is huge. We've talked about all of these quantitative benefits, but there is so much more to the story. There's so much more to the employee experience side. Um, you know, it isn't always dollars and cents. It's about the strategic advantage of having a modern T&E solution. So, Bharath, can you sing a few bars around some of the additional qualitative benefits you saw in this study?
Absolutely. So when we spoke to customers, of course, investment in Navan also unlocks some strategic benefits for some of them, for all of them. I mean, I'm looking at some of these. That's why I said so. Some of these are quite interesting to explore, and customers told us that they provided significant strategic value to them. Especially, I want to touch upon two things here. So that's improved policy compliance and duty of care. Then the piece around cash flow and sustainability tracking. So those are the two I've highlighted here. So when we talk about duty of care, and I think Michael, you spoke to this earlier. It's here in the US and in EU, it's a legal obligation, right? It's not a nice to have anymore. So employers are responsible for employee safety during business travel, which means visibility is a critical capability now. And from a financial risk perspective as well, duty of care failures can trigger lawsuits, regulatory penalties, and of course, uninsured cost as well. So centralized travel visibility reduces this exposure, and of course, it enables timely, defensible responses for customers when and if incidents occur. So I think that's one key strategic benefit that customers we had very fruitful conversations with customers about. Another area that we had a very good discussion around is about the aspect around improved cash flow and sustainability tracking. Customers also told us that travel and expense is often one of the least visible but most frequent cash outflows. Improving cash flow here means it's a lot because it matters to them because real-time visibility and tracking of committed spend and faster expense cycles reduces surprises at the end of the day. It tightens financial control and improves confidence in forecast, and that's especially critical in volatile cost environments. So I think those are, at least for me, based on the conversation that we had with customers, there were very interesting points and discussions that happened around these two areas.
Cool. I think a lot of what we've touched on today is Navan is really focused on also just improving the employee experience and the user experience. Um, Michael, we all know the biggest challenge for a travel manager is leakage. Um, what is Navan doing differently to keep travelers on the platform?
I think we hit on a lot of it throughout the solution, but it's providing great experiences and really consumer grade like products to employees. We focus maniacally on two metrics on top of the speed to book, but it's also NPS and CSAT, so Net Promoter Score and customer satisfaction when you talk to our support agents. And I would say one thing that I can add that we haven't touched on, but we want to be able to provide this amazing, urgent 24/7, 365 support for our customers. We have a lot of AI automation there that can help with the basic tasks, but we also have live humans around the world, again, 24/7 in many different languages. And one thing that we start to hear more and more is employees feel like they're almost naked or without this support agent following them when they're on the road in case something goes wrong. And while we build great products, while we drive all the inventory, the sources, we provide benefits and loyalty points and rewards when you save the company money. The other thing that we're really doing is making sure that we're there for customers when they need us and we can support them through things, which then again drives more adoption onto the platform versus going and booking on third-party sites or with other solutions. So I think that's another big area of focus that we haven't necessarily touched on throughout the presentation that I can add.
Awesome. The support element is huge, especially, speaking to the storms in New York. Selfishly, it's
Yep.
so nice to know we have a fantastic team there to support travelers no matter what comes up. All right, these stats are huge. They bear repeating. Bharath, can you just give us a quick summary again of some of our key highlights that we've chatted through today?
Absolutely. So in summary, when we look at the composite organization, investment in Navan delivered the composite organization a return on investment of 376%. That is 7.2 million US dollars in net present value and payback in less than 6 months. This is also taking into consideration the cost element, which included the cost associated with Navan licensing as well as the cost associated with the internal effort to onboard and make Navan work. So that's, in fact, a really strong business case. And we just saw it's not just a financially sensible decision, but also a strategically sensible one as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Bharath. I know we're coming up on time here. So, Michael, to close us out, What would you tell a CFO who is looking at these numbers but is still afraid to pull the trigger because of the implementation process?
Yeah, I would say, it's not a ERP transformation. And what I mean by that is it's not the most complicated thing to be able to change. So we typically would want to integrate to the SSO system for security and provisioning. We'd want to integrate to your HRIS system, which we provide, API integrations to, or can set them up very quickly with an IT team. And then we integrate into your ERP system. Um, a lot of the effort on making a change is actually in the change management itself. So it's actually, how do we announce this change? How do we go and throw parties at your various offices and give away swag and things like that? And we actually like to make it a very, very fun type of event. And not often do the finance teams get to implement tools that are so personable or personal, that touch every single user or employee across the company, and are met with usually a lot of excitement because there would have been friction in the past. So we want to make it a big bang celebration. And that's where we spend a lot of the time implementing. But this payback period and the implementation times, they're relatively short, and it can be a couple months for a couple 100,000 employee big global organization. It can be down to a day for smaller companies. And so we do a lot of handholding. We provide dedicated implementation and account management resources. And ultimately, it's a big win for the company and the company's culture and the employees, because they ultimately get to benefit. So I think it's worth it. But happy to discuss anything else. And I would say
Awesome.
thank you. It's always scary to launch something with a third party Forrester that's going to go and independently talk to our customers. I'm so happy to see the rigorous effort and work that went into this, and to see the results as well, because it's an independent study. It's not something that we're doing ourselves with Forrester. So really appreciate the work, and very, very happy with the outcomes that you guys were able to find.
Awesome. Well, I know we're at time. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Barath, for spending some time with us today. For those of you who are interested in learning how, you could apply some of these exciting benefits to your program, I think there's a link in the chat to request a demo. Otherwise, definitely go in, read the report. This webinar will be available on demand. I know I will probably be rewatching to get some tidbits. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you for all joining us today. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Right.
Bye bye.